Okay, so this is going to be lab one, and this is probably going to be one of a few videos that we're going to do on this, because after you've seen these things go together, it's just a matter of repeating the way the picture looks. So we're going to take a look at this diagram right here, and essentially we are going to have the one pump set up right here. We're going to have the flow meter set right here. You can see this plumbing where it kind of loops around, and it's actually connected to this over here. Okay, so there's not much going on, and then we're going to plug this thing in and actually make it work. So I'm going to set you down, and I'm going to show you a few things while we go through this in order to move these parts around. Now, one thing that you're going to notice is that with these components here, you'll have some yellow knobs with red tabs, and then you'll have some black ones. The black ones do not move, but the yellow ones with the red tab actually indicates where the lock is pointing and how you can move it. So in other words, if I turn this sideways here, then I can't move this side to side, therefore I can't unlock it. But if I turn this out and this one is out, I can move it forward, and then it'll actually kind of tip up for me, and then I'll be able to take it off. Okay, so that's going to be kind of important for us moving these parts around. But again, what I'm going to do is go through the process of showing you how all of this is going to get connected, and then we'll take a look at that very quickly. So I'm going to set you down over here, and we're going to adjust this camera to where hopefully you can see most of what's going on, all right, as I do this process. Okay, so I'm going to try to work very quickly. We're going to set this out of the way here. I don't need this pump, so I'm going to turn the tabs just like I discussed before. And I believe, yep, there we go. We're going to set this pump and motor assembly off to the side. And there's actually rooms down at the bottom there, but I'm just trying to get out of the way. Then I'm going to take this one here, and I am going to attempt to move this one. And the only reason I want to move this is I want to get it out a little, I want to get it out of the way some, so I can actually have a little bit more room to work here. And it's a good idea to lock it in. It just makes a little bit sense. I'm going to take this guy here, and I'm going to move it in. The circuit does show that putting one in between here, so what I'm going to have to do is make sure my O-rings are here, and then I'm going to start the assembly, and you'll notice that it actually just falls right into these holes here. So that's what we want to get. So I'm going to make sure that this is reasonably tight. Again, you saw me spin this fitting. That's not necessarily a good thing, so I want to hold on to both sides while I make these things a little bit snug. I'm going to go ahead and grab this fitting here, and I'm going to do the loop like you saw in the diagram, if you can remember. And also remember too, in the learning materials section, there are reference materials, and all of these labs should be in there at this point that you're watching the video. Okay, so I have these two things connected right here. This is the intake of the pump, and of course this is where the water is over here. Now I need to get the output of the pump, put it over here so that we can get this circulated back through. So I'm going to grab another one of these, and I'm going to start making sure my O-ring is there. And I'm going to hook this up, and I'm going to get this the best way that I can. And I'm going to hold on to this while I tighten, hold on to this while I tighten. Looks like my motor is already hooked up, but I kind of go through there. It's really, really easy because red goes in the red, black goes in the black, blue goes in the blue, and green goes in the green, and this thing is all set up. So the only other thing that I'm going to want to do from here is I'm going to want to plug in this. I'm going to keep that off, and then I want to find the cord for my e-stop. And I'm going to get that plugged in there. I don't need to turn anything on just yet because we still have a little bit of work to do. Now, there's going to be some other things that we need to do, just like we discussed in the first video. There's going to be some sensors that we hook up. So we want to know what is the actual output pressure of the pump. So we can go over here and push that in. And then what we can do is we're going to, we're going to hit the on button here. And just hold that for a second. It turns on. We don't want it plugged in when we turn it on because we don't want any pressure to start reading. It should be at 0, so we can plug that in now. This is where it really gets fun because we're going to have to figure out how to prime this whole system over here. So what we're going to do is get a little bit of water. And the water is actually going to go over to here, and this is just so that we can prime this pump so that we can get that working. So I'm going to start by taking this water here, and pouring it into the top. Now notice the position of the valves. If the handles are going in the direction, or basically they're parallel to the actual pipe, then that means that they are flowing in that direction. But if they're 90 degrees, then it's not flowing. So right now that is off. The other thing that I need to pay attention to is where the water is actually going and coming from. So I'll notice that there's a few other of these that are open. I need to close them off for the time being so that things don't go right down into my lower tank. So all three of these valves, I'm going to shut those off. I'm going to take a look. It looks like the upper tank's okay. I'm okay with water flowing into the top of the upper tank, so I'm going to allow this to flow in this direction. I'm going to allow this to flow in this direction. Okay, so all of that's moving. So now if it goes through the pump, it's going to go through here. It can't go down because the valve is off. It can go up here into the top, but it can't leak back down. So I'm in really good shape. And those are turned off, so I can actually open this one so that I can get flow from this valve here. I need to make sure that my tank is shut off. My tank is shut off. And now when I open this valve, then there's only one place for the water to go. And if you can see it in the camera, it might be hard, but you can see this actually starting to get a little bit of water in it. This hose is getting water in it, and water is going to find its own level. So that's very important. So this right here, all right, is as high as the water is going to go there. Now, something that we may have to do is we may have to play around by unhooking this so that the air doesn't get trapped in here. And notice you can actually see water coming up through here. So sometimes it's in a good interest to move this around a little bit to help get some of the air bubbles out, because if there's any air, then eventually what's going to happen is that the pump will cavitate. And basically it's trying to pump air as opposed to water. And if it's pumping air as opposed to water, then it's actually going to stop, and it'll stop drawing that water altogether. So once we've done that, okay, so remember, we got to make sure all of our valves are closed, and then only the valves are open in the direction that we want the water. And essentially we want that water over here. And the hope is that this is full of water, okay? It should be full of water here. Then that means that this is full of water, and then it can actually pull. But we have a very short amount of time to be able to pull this off, because what's going to happen is that this water is going to drain down reasonably quickly. But what we're going to have to do is we're actually going to have to open the line to the tank, okay, so that there's a column of water, and then at the right time, and then it'll actually start pulling up from the tank and then putting it in this top tank. Okay, so I need to be prepared to know what valve I'm actually going to open up here. And I already know it's going to be this lower one, the one on the right, the one on the middle one over here, that I'm going to have to open up to allow that thing to pump. So let's go ahead and see what that looks like. I'm going to take my e-stop off here. I've already set this up. You're going to be taking a look at how to set this thing up here before you get everything started here. So what I can do is I'm going to go ahead and run this pump, and then I'm going to quickly start working on the working on these valves. So pump is starting. I've opened up my column. I don't want this to get too low. I need to shut that off before it starts sucking air. So it looks like I am getting some flow here, but it does look like I have a little bit of air in here. So I'm going to be watching a few things. First of all, I can see that I'm getting a little bit of flow and it's increasing, so that's a big plus, okay? That means that I'm actually getting more. So it's going to pull out, it's going to be able to pull out some of the air, but it's not going to pull out all of the air. Notice here that I'm getting some good flow. I want to watch the level of my tank down here because I don't want it to get so low that I start sucking air. So at some point, what I'm going to do, and you'll also notice here that my fluid is actually rising. So again, paying attention to the fluid level down here, paying attention to the fluid level up here. Ultimately, I want to fill this up as much as possible, but I don't want to actually pull air. So as I'm getting a little closer to the bottom here, what I may need to start doing is opening up my valve for the top tank and then closing the valve for the bottom tank. Okay? So essentially what I've done at this point is that I've stopped pulling the fluid out of the bottom tank, and at the exact same time I started pulling water from the top tank, and now I have my system actually primed. As I'm looking at these semi-clear tubes, I don't notice any air bubbles flowing through. I'm getting a little over 15 gallons per minute. That's about what the pump capacity is at that particular RPM. So I have successfully got this up, and now I'm ready to actually start doing the lab. Okay, yes, that was just setting up for the lab. Now I'm ready to start doing the lab, and we'll talk about that in future videos.